firstly, thank you so much for coming to the Coffee Chaos and Confidence podcast with me, Coach Casey. That's the first time I think I've actually said that on a podcast. So that means you definitely are episode 1, right? So Victoria, let's just start off. As I found out you're not married, so I can't call you Mrs. Cunningham, like in the film Austin Powers. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me who you are and what do you do?
Okay, so my name's Victoria. I am Irish, Northern Irish, but I live in Scotland. Um, Not that you can tell from the accent because I've never lost my Northern Irish accent. And I run a business called the Ordinary People Academy, where we train people to become yoga teachers, Pilates teachers, breathwork and meditation teachers. And we're really looking to have ordinary people in our classrooms because I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm not thin enough to be a Pilates teacher, or I'm not ethereal enough to be a yoga teacher, or I'm not Wim Hof, so I can't be a breathwork teacher. And actually, I'm wanting to say, actually, you don't have to be any of those things. You can just be yourself, but also be an excellent teacher.
Wow, amazing. Do you know what? It's really funny because I'm terrible with accents, and I knew you were in Scotland, but I know we've talked about Ireland in past conversations before, and I've got each time I've gone, is she Irish or is she Scottish? But that's embarrassing because my family heritage is from Ireland, so yeah, I should probably with surname like
You
Kate,
should know.
I should
And
know really.
I think though, the Northern Irish accent can really be very similar to west of Scotland. And,
Yeah.
and there are times I've lived here for 30 years on and off. So I get confused. And I remember talking to a mum in the library, and her son was wearing this t-shirt that said Irish. And I'm like, oh, who got you that? And she went, I got it. And I'm going, why? And she says, because I'm Northern Irish. Turns out she lived like 10 miles away from where I lived, but I hadn't recognized, I thought she was Scottish.
Amazing.
That's so I make mistakes as well. So yeah.
So she wasn't dressed as a leprechaun and wearing the hat then, right?
That was what, yeah, I couldn't understand why why she wasn't doing that. She had a tam o'shanter on. I thought she was definitely Scottish, but she was.
Amazing. And on that note, then, so when you said about ordinary people, obviously, you know, it's almost like judging the book by a cover, isn't it? Like, say you're not Wim Hof. Um, I liked when you said as well before when you sent me over the description. We're going to put in the show notes and so forth. You don't need to be tattooed bro to be a breathwork teacher. So, what kind of spurred you on from that then, from kind of the norm of being the yoga teacher or the stereotypical breathwork
Yeah, I
facilitator.
think what's interesting is that breathwork is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. It's really rising in popularity. People are wanting to learn how to breathe better in order to help their nervous system and help their physical and mental health. But a lot of the people who are the instigators and starters of this are young, heavily tattooed, trendy dudes who are, maybe they've done PT and now they've moved into the breathwork world. And so it can be a bit off-putting. It's like going back to the gym again for people. And I just want to remind um again, ordinary people that actually everybody can do breath work. The other thing is, I think sometimes it's expected that you'd be really airy furry and really quite hippy dippy. And I'm like, no, you don't have to be. You can actually be really grounded and solid and sweary, but still be a breath worker, still be a yoga teacher. Um, you know, I'm I'm a fat Pilates teacher, and I'm okay with that.
You're not fat.
Well, I'm fatter than a lot of Pilates teachers.
So what got you into like yoga and breathwork then? Have you always done this or?
Yeah, yoga it's an interesting one. I started to do yoga when I was 13 in Northern Ireland
Wow.
with a book. So I got a book from the library and I thought this is amazing. I want to do this. And I'm making all these shapes and doing all these things. When I was 16, I finally convinced my mom that I could, that I would be allowed to go to a class. And at that time, we're still talking late 80s. So yoga was not popular and certainly not in Northern Ireland. Um, but I went to a class at the local technical college. I was the youngest by about 40 years. It was again, it wasn't trendy in these days. So it was like a pile of old ladies and a one man who farted a lot. And but I knew from the first class that I just loved it. I remember, and I went from I was 16 until I was 18. It really helped me through my A levels, my GCSEs, doing my exams. It really helped me with um I was always quite an anxious child and very much in my head. And there was just something about yoga coming into your body really, really helped me. And I had never been a sporty kid. I was always picked last at sport. And I remember I had a sort of revolving door of a letter that I used to give to the PE teacher. Oh, I'm sick. I've got this. I've got that. Every week I was coming up with something because I didn't want to do PE. I didn't like doing things where I wasn't picked, and I just didn't like that type of being cold and doing cross country or getting balls thrown at me because we were doing netball or hockey or something like that. I just hated it. But the yoga, it just I just love putting my body in all these weird shapes. And it just was, it was amazing for me. And I remember my teacher saying to me, "You should be a yoga teacher." And I turned around and, with the arrogance of youth, and I said, "No, I'm going to university and I'm going to get a real job." Little did I know that this would be my real job. And it has been since 2006.
Oh, wow.
I've actually been teaching yoga since 2001. And then in 2006, I gave up my day job. I was working as a youth and community worker, and I had noticed that the kids that I was working with were like 18 to 25, and it was nearly too late for them. Like they'd moved into their bad habits, and it was their kids that I actually wanted to work with. So I quit my full time job and I started a charity called Stretch and Play, which was about providing yoga to kids in post Troubles Northern Ireland to help them with self expression and yeah, and I still deliver that training all these years later.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So what do you think was the thing then for you? Because a lot of the time I talk with people about, I mean, I know we've spoken about these things before, but like about limiting beliefs and so forth. Um, what do you think it is then that kind of spurred you on at that age? Because like I say, it's almost like a very different, it's like effectively you went and did the thing that wasn't the cool thing, it wasn't the trendy thing. So like, is there something that spurred you on to do that, or like, is it just the way you enjoyed it, embraced it?
I always I think I was always a bit alternative. And now, when I look with the benefit of hindsight and everything, I actually think, and I'm getting really heavy really quickly, and I don't mean to, sorry, Andy, but a
That's
lot of
fine.
what I was doing was to find a way to deal with the trauma of living in the troubles. So I, as an adult, worked in a post Troubles society, but as a kid, I was born in 1975, and the Troubles started in 1969. So I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s when really the Troubles were at their worst. So a lot
Wow.
of bombs, a lot of bullets, a lot of death, a lot of fear, and not in a personal level, but on a community level. And
Right.
I think I took on a lot of that, um, yeah, of that sort of community trauma. Um, and that said, I think there's really not a person in Northern Ireland of my age that won't have been touched by the troubles in some way or other, regardless of what side you were on. There were always things, and I had on a personal level, my uncle was a police officer and he was killed by the IRA. And that was a huge shock and rift for the family. And it happened 3 weeks before my 8th birthday. So for me,
Wow.
it was basically the loss of my childhood and my innocence in many ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it? Because when you think about it, you think I grew up with seeing stuff on the TV and hearing things on the TV, but you said Ireland. I thought I'm going to be the judge now. Ridley diddly. I grew up with my dad loving Irish folk music. So in my mind, it was all, leprechauns and jingle bells. Do you know what I mean? So it's like when I hear about people in Ireland, it almost as you said that, I just suddenly went, oh yeah, that's the same place. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
isn't it like um, kind of weird how when you see stuff, I mean, I do my best to kind of shield myself and my girls from the news these days, especially at the minute. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world.
Yes.
But you know, one obviously because obviously I know you've got a young boy, isn't it, as well?
Yes.
How does that kind of childhood and upbringing that you had kind of does that change anything the way you do stuff as a parent?
I think so. I think it's really made me want to address the traumas that I've had, and
Hmm.
um because I think a lot of what happened was that it was normalized. It was like that, that's how we grew up. We were just used to it. And I don't want those experiences to be normal for my son.
Hmm.
And part of my thing was to move away. And it is really quite ironic that I moved to Glasgow, because Glasgow, of course, is one of the most sectarian cities in, in the UK in terms of the football teams and the sort of Protestant Catholic um, arguments that there are.
Hmm.
But naively, I didn't think about that, and and in a way, I was very protected from it, because when I moved here, I went to Glasgow University, and it was like a different world from the sort of working class football supporters. It was definitely very different. But I think for me, it was, I wanted to escape. I didn't want to be in Ireland, and I wanted to sort of move away. I was surprised to go back and live there for a while as an adult. I
Hmm.
I didn't intend that to be my reality, but it was. And I mean, I've not moved too far away, but this is where I live now. Scotland is definitely a much calmer place to be. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So when you come to, like learning from what your own experiences, are there any kind of routines or habits that you have that you kind of maybe have taken from like the yoga or the breath work that you've kind of then kind of I was going to say enforced, but I don't feel like that's kind of almost shared with your partner or your son. Is there anything that you kind of do that together, or is there any kind of things that you use, knowing that okay, this is kind of like it's like saying like that the whole apple a day thing. But is there a kind of anything that you do with your family?
Yeah, but those things that the other thing that they say is physician heal thyself,
Hmm.
and that the hairdressers' children have the worst hairdos, I know all the things to do,
Hmm.
but doing them is something different. My partner has no interest in yoga or Pilates. God love him. Sometimes he will be my demo model when I'm like teaching a class or something.
Yeah,
But he's not interested in that. But I do stretch and play activities with Alistair. Now that
amazing.
because he's 3.5 now, so he's just the right age to get them.
Yeah,
And but they're I mean, they're just lovely activities. We're sort of doing like circle time, and a lot of the things about stretch and play were about giving children a voice. Um, and now there's been so much research, particularly in Scotland, actually, about ACEs. I don't know if you've heard of ACEs, but
no.
they're adverse childhood experiences. So they've worked out that there are a number of different adverse experiences that, if you have those as a child, you are less likely to succeed as an adult.
Oh
And
wow.
so, yeah, the research, of course, came from America, as many things do at the start. But for some reason, Scotland have really been on the ball in terms of ACEs research in the UK. And so I've added all that information into the Stretch and Play program.
Wow.
because I want to make sure that Alistair doesn't have those adverse childhood experiences. It's things like addiction in the family,
Mhm.
incarceration, divorce, death, um,
Wow.
illness, all of these sort of quite big things, things on a personal or family level, but also things on a community level. And I can see now through that lens that I had a lot of those adverse childhood experiences growing up, more on a
Wow.
community level than anything else. But yeah,
Wow. That's amazing. Amazing. I love the fact that you can kind of do these things, and like the little things, like you're saying, like the was you say call it stretch and play.
stretch and play.
I love it because when my daughter was younger, we used to do like sound. It used to be like I can't remember what it was called. It was I think it was like noisy something or other, which is weird because she's always noisy now. But it was really interesting because I'm a massive music fan. I've played music my whole life, but just being able to like her to experience some of this thing, and it wasn't the fact that she was making a god awful noise because seriously, some of it was, but it was the fact that you can see them being able to freely express and
Yes.
freely able to create and be creative that a lot of children don't have that as an opportunity, and I think it's really interesting that you chose an avenue of yoga when you were younger, because in those times of need, a lot of kids may have just gone, oh, I'll go out with my mates and I'll stick to this, but you kind of, I almost kind of, that was weird. I got a bit of a weird energy then when you kind of like honed in and did something like yoga, which is you're in a room with other people, but it's not like it's like a team sport, is it? So I think that's like, yeah, it's quite exciting in a way, isn't it? That you were like free to create.
And I think, um, yeah, the yoga gave me a lot of support and allowed me to move physically. But actually, it was the mental support that it gave me because it did allow me, it introduced me to things like breath work and meditation.
Hmm.
And it gave me tools to help me calm down when I was feeling anxious or, yeah, to like deal with situations that felt outside my control.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So obviously, it's not just yoga that you do. So what's someone who's completely naive like me, when you say Pilates and yoga, is Pilates that weird machine thing that you get in, or
There is a machine, but you can also do Pilates mat work. And
right?
so what is interesting about Pilates is that when I started to teach full time, I went to like some of the local gyms and I'm like, I'm a yoga teacher. And they went, again, we're talking the early noughties. Okay.
Hmm.
So they would go, we have a yoga teacher. She's 83. She's got 6 students, but we can't have 2 yoga people on the books. If only you could do Pilates. And I had heard of Pilates and I'd done it myself when I was in Australia, but I wasn't interested and I really wanted to bring yoga to all these places. And they kept saying, if only you could do Pilates. And then I just thought, right, okay, I'm going to do a Pilates qualification. So I went and I trained. And at the time, I was the only person that had come from a yoga background. Everyone else had come from a fitness
Hmm.
background, like group exercise. And so they had a lot of better knowledge about, I guess, anatomy and physiology and movement patterns and things like that. But I had a really great knowledge of how to teach, how to hold space for people. And oh, if you can hear some noise in the background, that's the chaos.
Amazing, love
So
it.
yeah, there's some tears. Uh, it is a yeah, it's an evening, and we get a bit snotty in the evenings.
Amazing, amazing.
Mhm.
And do you
Daddy's
know what
saying
I love
no,
about
but
this? This is what one of the things that I think uh, is really beautiful about being in business is you've got business and you've got your family, um, and those two worlds. I always think that's why I called this podcast the with chaos in the middle, because that to me is exactly it. It's like coffee is me. I love coffee. We've got the confidence at the other side, but in the middle is the chaotic, like as it all the worlds collide.
we're hitting
Bless
the
him.
chaos right now. What happened? Daddy
Oh,
took the lip balm off you.
you kidding me? What flavor was it? Oh no.
You broke them. Did you break the lip balm?
Oh no.
Isn't that terrible?
That is terrible.
Okay, well, you better go now. Yes. Yes. Are you going to stay on the podcast? Yeah. He says yeah.
Amazing. What flavour was the lip balm?
It was I can't remember. It doesn't. Yeah, it just has a funny flavor,
Do you know,
but it was rainbow coloured
oh,
packaging. So, all right, are you staying?
I remember my daughter when she was. Hey, buddy. I remember my daughter when she was younger. She had a lip balm and she went to do that. She went, and that, and she bit it. She must have been about 3 or 4 at the time.
Okay.
And I remember her just looking at her and be like, yeah, you could tell she knew she shouldn't have done that. Hello. Hey, you've grown since I last saw you.
What's Andy got on his top? I don't know. What does it say on your top?
Without limits.
Without limits. Oh, that's very good. Is that a work top?
It is one of my coaching t-shirts. Yeah.
No, Daddy.
That's the microphone. So
Amazing.
okay,
Amazing.
right. Well, this is the chaos. No, Mommy's on the microphone. I'm going to put you away now. Oh God! Now that was chaos because I've had to block the door closed.
Oh no. Amazing. Amazing. I love that. So, what I just, again, I love that because like that's the truth of it, isn't it? Really, like being a parent and owning a business. And I know. So you said Alistair's 3.5.
3.5 now. Yes.
So, like, how was that as like a shock from like working and running your own business and then having a child? How was that kind of world feel for you, like in that kind of getting used to it all? And
yeah, a huge shock. And it's interesting again because, you know, I've been.
do you know what I love? Before you say this, you know, when you see these TV programs and then they have someone who comes in and goes, "Oh, yeah, have you thought about this?" And they go, "Wow, I haven't." Alistair was basically just our proper anchor into that next segment of parenting, which I just think's beautiful.
Yeah, and
thank you, Alistair.
Yeah, and I think the parenting thing, yeah, is really interesting because I've been teaching, like training people to become yoga teachers and Pilates teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working mostly with women, so they, you know, a lot of them are parents, mothers, and I had not had that experience, and I used to be like, well, why can't they take the whole weekend off to go and do the teacher training? And why can't they get their children minded and so that they can do their homework? And why, you know, and yeah, like a real naivety. I don't even know if it was that or just and maybe a little bit of arrogance as well, like just expecting things. And now I've realized, my God, it's hard work. It is hard work. And I remember when I had him as a babe in arms and I was going, oh my God, this is so hard. And people just laughed at me because they're like, it's only going to get harder. And that's the truth. You know, it's, it's definitely been a baptism of fire. Alistair is an interesting story as well because he's a lockdown baby.
Right.
And my partner and I, we weren't together all that long. We'd actually just moved in together in February 2020.
Oh, wow.
And then we got locked down in March. So,
there's a test of a new relationship.
It really was. And there were a lot of people who either split up or they went the other way like we did. And what happened was the first year, so that Christmas 2020, I normally go home to Ireland and I couldn't go home because of this lockdown. And 9 months later, Alistair appears. So
wow.
It was very unexpected. I was 46 when I had him. So that's pretty late. And my partner and I were like, probably too much information, but we were not concerned about any sort of protection because I was like, at my age, there's no issue. It's going to be fine. And then my period didn't come, and I was like, maybe that's the perimenopause. And then I was like, I don't know. There's other things going on here. And yeah,
Wow.
it turned out I was pregnant. And um, it was an interesting time to be pregnant because you couldn't have your partner with you in the appointments.
Wow.
You know, everything had to be sort of on your own, and it felt very isolated. Even giving birth, it wasn't at the start of it. I have friends who've given birth a bit before, and their partner wasn't allowed in at all. You know, my partner was allowed in, but then he wasn't allowed to stay, and you know
Yeah.
that. So it was a bit strange. I was just sort of left on my own. And
With
actually,
this thing that made noises and wanted
yeah,
your
like I'm
100%
going,
attention.
I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Can you help me? Yeah. So it was very strange. And of course, my family couldn't travel over. You know, all of these restrictions were still in place. So it was yeah, it was an interesting time to have a baby. But
Wow.
if there hadn't been a lockdown, I don't think he would be here. That's the honest truth.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you were to like, I don't know, if you look at the the way you've been on that journey, and I love the fact that you're like you've been on this kind of like magical journey as a kid, which is like scary, but also sounds like quite I don't know. It seems like you had quite a lot of like deep connection with the yoga and so forth. What then made you get into like breath work? Because you know, I feel like breath work. We were saying about buzzwords and so forth like that. My big bugbear at the minute is let's go for a sea dip.
Oh yeah.
That I understand everyone's going for a sea dip, but I spent my entire childhood surfing in January, February, March, April, May, the whole year round, and it was
Yeah.
bloody cold. Like I'd be in there for 2 hours. So yes,
Yeah.
oh, let's dip in the sea for 3 minutes and post it on my Instagram. I'm like, what a load of bollocks. Go for a surf, you'll have a great time. You won't worry
Yeah.
about stress. So
Yeah.
what got you into breath work and like, you know, what does that involve even?
Mm, I think the thing is, I've been practicing. It is part of the yoga tradition is to do they call it pranayama in yoga.
Bless you.
But I think what was interesting for me was actually I did yoga a lot, and instead of breathing as I was moving, I was actually holding my breath, and I hadn't
Right.
realized it. And it was Alistair that really brought me back to breath work. I had done some work in 2012, and I actually did work with a guy, and that was his focus in his yoga practice was breath work. And so I learned a lot from that. But again, knowing it and doing it are two different things. And actually, it was when I was breastfeeding Alistair, and I was waiting for the latching thing, and I was holding my breath, wait until he started to feed. And someone pointed this out. They went, "You're holding your breath. And if you're holding your breath, he's going to hold his breath because he's going to think that's normal." And I was like, oh my God. And I started to notice all the times that I was holding my breath. And I think, yeah, it really made me want to explore this more and to get back into breathwork myself. And everything that I do, I like to share with other people. I am very much of the opinion that you teach best what you need to learn for yourself. So that's why I, you know, taught yoga for years. It's why I've trained teachers. It's the same thing with the Pilates. Although I started initially because I knew I would get work, I didn't expect to fall in love with it. And it is mostly mat work I do, not the scary machines, although that's becoming more popular and very Instagrammable at the moment.
They look like something you'd seen in some sort of dungeon in Amsterdam, don't they?
And do you know what? The name doesn't help. They're called the Reformer.
Right. Okay.
They're about reforming.
Sounds very manipulative, doesn't it?
Yeah. Mr. Pilates, who invented the system, created the system, was German. So, you know what the attitudes are about Germans. They're very strict. And yeah, it was like, okay, right.
I'm actually now even more scared of these reformers.
Yeah, I think they're quite scary. But yeah, the more I've worked with them and the more I've done that work, the more I've fallen in love with it. And actually, for me, I love working with people who who get it. You know, that's what I love. That they have the same passion for it that I do.
Mhm.
So that's what really interests me actually. So a lot of the teacher training I do now is actually on a one-to-one level
Mhm.
because I really focus on people who want to specialize in certain things.
Mhm.
And I find that so much more interesting than just your generic teacher training courses, you know? Um, yeah, it's nice to actually explore certain niches and things like that. I love that.
You just got me thinking when you say about breath work, because I watched the Wim Hof. Did you see the Wim Hof TV show they did? I think
Mhm.
that was a couple of years ago, and I found that really interesting. And I love the way that I can't think what the singer was it the singer that was on it. He just stayed in the cold, and it was like he talked about some stuff, and it sounded like he's been through a lot, and um, it was interesting the way he was able to manage everything in the ice, really the best out of everyone.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was a bit. I've always thought it was quite interesting with breath work, and I've never until you've just said what you just said about Alistair, kind of gone, oh my god, I think I kind of do this now. My daughter's got special educational needs, and sometimes can get quite agitated. And one thing I don't even know where I picked it up, but I've just when like she's like agitated, I've matched her breathing when I'm giving her a hug. I've matched her and then slowed mine down, and
Yeah.
she copies me.
Yeah.
And likewise today, my wife's had a bit of a crazy week this week. She's had to ring 999. She had something else happen. It's all been a bit crazy. And oh, we got a new guest.
We've got chaos going on again.
Oh no, you're kicking the door in.
I think so.
I was going to about make a comment about Glaswegians then, but I thought I better not. Um, but I gave my wife a hug this afternoon when she came back, and I was like, "Are you all right?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's just been a big week." And I did the same.
You did the same
I
thing.
mirrored her breath, and like she calmed down. So it's interesting when you say that because I've never even considered that, but I know I consciously do it, but didn't realize that in a way that that's really. And I don't know if it was you that showed you put the thing on. Was it Instagram about doing the thing with your breath
Yeah.
work in your hand?
Yes.
Like, so if someone was looking at getting into breath work, then where would they first start?
I mean, Wim Hof, in a way, is a good start. He's really introduced the the whole ideology. But my issue with Wim is that he is a bit extreme. He is the Iceman, and you don't need to take things to extreme. For some people, the ice baths, the cold dips, are actually not good for their nervous system and can make them like re-traumatize them rather than help to
Hmm.
calm them down. So actually one of the simplest ways to start is by sort of watching YouTube videos or doing something like the box breathing, which
Hmm.
is a 4 by 4 by 4 breath. So it's basically you inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath in for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold the breath out for another count of 4. And you do it 4 times, and by the time you've done that, you feel much, much calmer. It's also known as Navy SEAL breathing because they taught it to Navy SEALs.
Right.
So, one, they were teaching it to them for their PTSD, but actually, the other reason they were teaching it to them was so that they could stay calm at the trigger moments.
Yeah.
So, if they could regulate their breathing, then they could regulate their shooting, which is,
Wow.
yeah, like it's very
Wow.
interesting and it's such a simple thing to do. So I do it at night, inhale for 4, exhale. Sometimes I don't do the breath holds. I just do the inhale in order to calm myself down. exhale for longer. So
So
breathe in for
that's
4,
why.
breathe out for 6.
So is that why I love the way these are all kind of weirdly interconnected. So in I quite often will do a yoga nidra in the evening before bed,
Yeah.
and they get you to breathe in for 4 and then exhale for 7.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Oh wow. So it's like okay, amazing.
So every inhale stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. It starts to activate you. It's why when you are doing something such as a podcast just before you hit record, I bet you didn't realize this, but you probably took a big inhale.
Yeah.
And then you hit record. So we do that to stimulate ourselves, get ourselves ready for action.
Yeah.
But then every exhale brings you into a state of relaxation, into the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you exhale for longer than you inhale, that's how you can allow yourself to relax.
Wow.
And it's I talk a bit in the training about the breath brain connection. But actually it's your nervous system that you are directly stimulating and targeting with your breath.
Wow. It feels like there's so much more to just breathing in and breathing out. And I just literally thought, oh my God, every time I do a gig, even though I don't get nervous, I say this because I get excitement. But before I start, I always go, it's like the big, I just wanted more oxygen.
And it's, and you know what? It's a really silly one. But you see, if people start yawning, I never am insulted by my yawners. So I used to get this woman who came to Pilates and she had a really stressful job. And every time she'd just be like, yawning away in the back quite noisily. And I never ever took it as an insult because actually it was a compliment. It showed me that she was moving into her parasympathetic nervous system and she was actually relaxing and letting go. My camera does this thing where it likes to blur. It's gone all blurry. So I'm going to do this. It's all sorts of chaos.
I love that. There we go. Look at that. Ta-da! Amazing.
Blurry head.
So with your ordinary people, I've got is it John Legend?
Oh yes.
Yeah, I've got that in my head now. So with your Ordinary People Academy, do you actually still facilitate people on like a general, like people turn up and do breath work, yoga, Pilates, or you just work with teachers now?
Mostly I work with teachers, but I do sessions. I was doing monthly sessions, and then I stopped for a while last year, but I'm thinking of restarting them, probably either full moon or new moon times, because I like those. And we do like a breathe together online. And so it's a combination of things that I'll do. It's not just that we're like doing that 4x4 breath for an hour. We're doing something like we do a little bit of like chair yoga, a bit of movement, a bit of embodiment, a little bit of work to, again, calm the nervous system. And then we move into the breath work. And then I do things like yoga nidra, like the yoga relaxations and things like that. So, so I do those online just with anyone. I also do it in corporate and charitable sectors. So I go into businesses and I go into charities. I think what's been really interesting for me actually is the number of charities who've sent their staff on the facilitator training. I think that's just brilliant. Yeah. So we've had a cancer charity, a children's hospice sent a couple of social workers because they're working with bereaved parents and they really have recognized the importance of breath work. I think that's amazing. Some victim charities as well have one of the women who came from a victim's charity was actually doing it for herself because she was struggling with vicarious trauma, as in she was hearing the stories and then she was being re-triggered and really having difficulty just doing her job. So they sent her on it so that she'd be able to have tools to help herself, but now she's actually training the other staff as well.
Do you know what I find really amazing is that, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this, and this is just something that I've I've got a bit of a goal myself, and it's to positively impact a certain amount of people. And it was Jay Shetty that I think I remember him talking about. He wanted to impact a certain amount of people, and I've just literally heard you say that, and I'm like, you're teaching one person this breathwork facilitator training that you're doing, and they're going and helping cancer patients in charities, children's. Like, how does that feel to you? Because that's like that, just like you're like the seed.
Oh,
That
I
must
love
be
it.
that must just be amazing, right?
Yeah, it really, yeah, I am so proud of it. I am. I think more so than I am of anything else that I've done. I am, you know, I can see the impact of it immediately. That's one of the things I love about being self-employed is that you
Hmm.
see the results of your work straight away. But I've never seen it as much with yoga or with Pilates. The changes that I see with breath workers is yeah, it has huge impact, and it has the ability to impact even more. And I really, yeah, want to get it out there as much as possible. And again, with ordinary people doing it and saying you don't have to go to Bali, you don't have to spend thousands and thousands to do the training, you don't need anything. One of the things that some people are interested in, like ayahuasca, mushrooms, these journeys that they can go on with
Hmm.
hallucinogenic substances. But actually you can get the same results using your breath. And you don't, it means that if you're going on a bad trip, you've not taken anything, you can actually just stop breathing like that and start to breathe differently, and you'll calm right down.
Wow.
So for me, breath work is, yeah, it's poised to be massive
Oh,
because
it's
it's
literally
something that we
magical.
all do, but we just don't do it consciously. And and I mean, how much is life going to change if kids are doing it in schools? They're going to be so much calmer. They're going to be able to deal with these adverse childhood experiences. They're
Hmm.
going to grow up to be better humans, I think. So
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. So, Victoria, how can people find out more about Victoria and the Ordinary People Academy?
You can find me on the socials at
Mhm.
Ordinary People Academy. You can find my website, ordinarypeopleacademy.com. And yeah, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, not TikTok for some reason. I did like one TikTok video, um, but I really didn't know what I was doing. So I've left TikTok aside for a while. Um, I'm not on X. That's not good for my nervous system. So I'm just on the usual socials. You'll find me everywhere there.
Amazing. And you've got a breathwork facilitator training coming up. When was that? When does that start?
It starts at the start of March, and it is a 6-month course. So this is my fourth time running it. Um, and every time we've expanded and extended it, but this is the first time we're running it as a 6-month course. And what I'm loving about that is that it gives people the chance to really embody it.
Hmm.
I felt like before they were getting like just a hose full of information, and they then didn't know what to do with all the information. So you're not just learning one breathwork technique, you actually learn six, because I'm generous like that. You're also learning about the anatomy of the breath. You're learning about trauma, the nervous system, how to hold safe space for traumatized clients, um, different conditions like a what do you call it, COPD, asthma,
Oh, wow.
respiratory conditions, heart conditions, and how the breath work can impact that. So we've got all of this information, and people were just getting, it was too much. And they weren't getting enough practice time. So the course is now 6 months so that you get loads of time for peer to peer sessions and learning and supporting each other. Because, yeah, you want to feel really confident when you're doing something which actually should be simple, but simple doesn't always mean it's easy.
Amazing, amazing. I know you said you've got an offer for our listeners as well, so I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yes.
So, and just people can just reach out for you via the DMs on social or get on your website, yeah?
Yes, they can.
Amazing.
And they can, if they go onto the ordinarypeopleacademy.com, there's a link to book a call with me. And they can have a chat and do that. They might have Alistair in the middle of the call as well, but
that's real life, right?
Yeah.
That's the ordinary way. Amazing. And what a great way to end today. Victoria, thank you so much. It's been awesome. And you know what? I've learned a lot about breathwork today, which I didn't even realize I kind of knew a little bit.
You were doing, and yet you've been doing it.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, thank you so much, Victoria.
And that wraps up today's episode of the Coffee, Chaos and Confidence podcast with me, Coach Casey. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like and subscribe. It helps other listeners find the show. Also, go and check out the show notes to learn more about my incredible guests. Until next time, make sure you chase your dreams without limitations.